Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
You are now listening to the Unscripted Ohio Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Grove. For all the latest Buckeyes news, analysis, reaction, and the best Ohio State community on the entire internet, head over to buckeyegrove.com or follow us on Twitter at Ohio State Rivals. Without any further delay, it's time to get unscripted. Broadcasting from Podcast Central, a place that is not his mother's basement.
Hey, Mom! We get some meatloaf!
We promise. Here's your host, Kyle Lamb.
Hey, Mom! The meatloaf!
Wow, it is Monday, and I am with you, and I am broadcasting from Podcast Central. I'm your host, Kyle Lamb of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast. Good Monday, everybody. It is a great day for many, many reasons. We are brought to you by Buckeye Grove. One of the reasons it is a great day is because here at Podcast Central, I have upgraded. I've become more important in the world as I invested in some podcasting software, a wonderful little mixer that I've been playing along with today, and I'm enjoying this thing, and it's like the mother of all podcasting equipment. So I'm having fun with that, and I was having so much fun, and the fact that I wanted to share this, not just the fact I wanted to share this experience with somebody, but I wanted to bring in somebody to bring a little more insight and positivity to the show. So I got my good buddy Corey Thompson from the Scarlet and Gray podcast. Corey, how you doing, my man?
Uh-oh.
Well, if you're looking for positivity, I mean...
we got some applause for you. How about that? Hey, look at that. They are clapping your appearance here on the Unscripted Ohio Podcast.
I was wondering if you're bringing somebody else on if you're looking for positivity. I mean, I've been told recently I'm one of those air quote fans that I'm just not a real fan. So.
Well, to be fair, I've been told I was actually told on Sunday afternoon that I was I don't even remember. I was an Ohio State full-blown apologist or something. All because
you're a homer.
Well, yeah, I've been told that too. But I was actually just trying to, analyze the Ohio State offense in comparison to the Michigan offense. Because remember a couple weeks ago, everybody was telling me how great the Michigan offense was, and I wasn't even trying to defend the Ohio State offense. We're talking basketball, by the way, in case you're wondering. In case you're not familiar with the context of this conversation, we're actually talking basketball. There was no doubt Ohio State's offense was better in football, but we won't get into that right now. But I was told a couple weeks ago how great the Michigan offense was. And, I'm looking at me being the statistical analysis guy that I am. I'm just looking at the two, and they were basically dead even in terms of points scored per possession this year, even accounting for competition. So, hey, look, to me, you don't have to be a homer to say, okay, well, their offenses are comparable. So I said that, and now it's like everybody, because they have this perception Michigan's offense has been so wonderful that therefore I must be a homer comparing the two. I'm not even saying Ohio State's offense has been very good this year. I'm just saying Michigan's has been overrated. So, yeah, needless to say, I got called a homer, but I guess that's what happens when we try to be analytical here.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because we don't want to have our perceptions challenged, Kyle, not by facts and analytics. We want to just believe what we want to believe.
I guess so. Ohio State's offense, speaking of, so on Sunday afternoon, look, I'm just going to be honest here. They did not look very good. The lazy, sloppy turnovers manifested themselves once again, and they had a lot of mistakes. They didn't run very good offense in the second half. But all that being said, they still managed to come up with a 3-point win on the road. And I know you had a heart attack. You were saying that C.J. Jackson just, I guess, gave you the chills watching him again on Sunday.
He is this generation's Matt Sylvester.
Oh, good grief.
Well, I mean, look, Matt Sylvester used to make me look stupid. Not that that's very difficult to do, but used to make me look stupid back in the day when I would say, God, get him off the court, and then he hit us a game-winning 3 or something. And C.J. Jackson throws up a prayer. Now, he had an okay game, not a great game. I always get DMs during the game. I'm just waiting for him to go. But I actually think he's probably just playing out of position, out of necessity. But he throws up a prayer, ties the game. And when he made that, I thought, we're probably going to win this game just because of that. If you've ever been in sports or been on, you played on a team before, that kind of thing just takes the air out of your sail. Just, you had down to 1 or 2 on the shot clock. I think it was like 3 or 2, whatever. Just throws it up. Even Holtman in the press conference after the game called it a prayer, and it goes in. You're just thinking, what do we got to do? It's like we made this great comeback, and then they do that.
Before I want to expound on that, but you mentioning Matt Sylvester brings up something funny that I would like to share real quick. So in 2004, right after Thad Matta took over Ohio State, I remember having a conversation with him. I wasn't the only one there. It was like a couple of reporters were standing around, and this was kind of off the record, so I probably shouldn't be sharing this conversation. But I will point out this was early on. This was right after he first took over the program, so obviously his opinion changed. But it was kind of funny because he was talking about Matt Sylvester as a defensive player, and he looked over, and I remember him pointing. There was an aluminum fold-up chair, like with 5 feet away, and he pointed that. He said, "See that chair right there?" He said Matt Sylvester couldn't guard that chair, and that was him speaking in a very candid moment. Now, to be fair, this again, I think Sylvester gave it his all. He improved a little bit over the next year or two. He became a better defensive player. I think by the end of the year, Thad probably would have been speaking a little higher of him defensively. But it was funny you mentioned Sylvester because he didn't have a high opinion of Sylvester defensively when he first took over. But this team, look, C.J. Jackson is just one part of the problem. And the funny thing is, people will point, and I get so many responses on Twitter, that C.J. Jackson is the big problem, and I'm not saying he's not a problem, but people will say he's a big problem because Ohio State doesn't have a true point guard and he can't handle the ball. But the funny thing is, though, Corey, I think the bigger problem with this team is not the ball handling, and they're not great ball handlers, and that is part of the problem because they don't have a lot of confidence, and it creates some of the turnovers because they don't have confidence in dribbling. But I think the biggest problem is just lazy, sloppy passing. When Ohio State is engaged and making better passes and not assuming guys will be in the spot and putting a lot of oomph on the ball and not just kind of throwing rainbows. This team is very, very good at times, but the passing I think is a lot worse right now than the ball handling is.
I agree. It's frustrating. That's probably the most frustrating thing I have when I watch this team. And I love watching this team overall, even when they lose, because I love that they're always constantly giving a great effort. But, today a couple of times they got caught at the three-point line with a lazy, terrible pass or even when they're just being guarded one-on-one and the defender can tip the ball before it leaves their hands. It's just lazy, not looking for your pass lane. It's frustrating because it's such a basic thing. Look before you pass it. And sometimes they just get, like you said, they expect the guy to be there. They don't expect the defender to be out in a passing lane, so they just throw it before they look. And every time that happens, I scream at the television, look before you throw it.
It's amazing.
It's frustration.
Well, and I had somebody point this out, and this was something I was thinking during the game. It's the overplay is killing Ohio State. The book is out on Ohio State. Teams are overplaying defensively and trying to get in passing lanes, and you can see that on the television. I'm sure you can see it if you're a player on the floor. You see that overplay coming. They're not even disguising it, and yet they still throw these errant or these lazy, little 5-foot rainbows, and guys pick them off and take them the other direction. And it's really maddening that they haven't caught on. I mean, here's in a way, this is actually an encouraging statistic, but it's also frightening. I mean, Indiana had 16 transition points on Sunday. They only scored 52 points in the entire game. That means Ohio State only gave up, if my math is correct, 36 points. I mean, I know that's, 52 minus 16. That's easy math, right? Not for me. But
not
that's
for me either.
36 points in half court defense on Sunday. So I thought the defense was absolutely phenomenal. Scouting report and just staying in front of the guy. I mean, Romeo Langford is a really talented player, but Ohio State did a pretty good job of staying in front of him. Juwan Morgan, one of the best post players in the conference, can also hit a three. They held him to 3 points on 7 shots. So the Ohio State scouting report defense just was phenomenal on Sunday. But because of those live ball turnovers, Indiana stayed in the game and got back into the game. Ohio State could never extend it to double digits and get that knockout blow because they kept turning the ball over.
Yeah, and there was only like a very short stretch there where they hit 3 or 4 3-pointers in a row on us, and they were actually contested. It's just they went in. It happens, and they weathered the storm, of course. But it's ironically we're talking about playing the pass, the passing lanes. That's ironically what set up the slip by Andre Wesson to allow them to get the game winner there.
And you're right, but they should have capitalized that on much sooner, because they had so many stale possessions down the stretch where they just weren't moving the ball at all, and they weren't moving without the basketball. They were just milking clock, and it wasn't going anywhere. And that you're right. That last possession there with 20 seconds left, when Andre Wesson slipped the screen, he went and to set the ball screen, and then he faked it. And then after C.J. Jackson brushed it off, then Wesson, bolted for the basket, and they got the easy pass, and it led to the dunk, which was the go-ahead and game-winning score. And that was a great possession, but they need more of that. They need to take advantage of defenses that are playing them so far out on the perimeter, and they can get a lot more rim runs by doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think there's, just like you said, a lack of confidence among this team about trying to get to the basket, because honestly, there are a lot of their perimeter passings to try to get the defense moving back and forth and try to get them shifting. But now Luther showed a little bit today. I actually like the sorry if I could say it right, trajectory that Luther is on. As far as his playing ability, he's getting more confident, going to the basket a little bit more, his outside shots hitting more. I think they said he was number 2 in the Big Ten in 3-point shooting during the game at one point, or maybe that was just among freshmen. I'm not sure.
It's I think it's number 2 in Big Ten play. Like Big Ten in all Big Ten games, I believe he's the number 2 shooter right now.
That's crazy. Nobody would have thought that when Luther came in, but. But he also saw him try to die. He made one really nice play where he split the double team just with his dribble, and we just need that desperately bad. But there's not a lot of confidence in Jackson, Woods, Luther, Andre, whoever else comes in, and there's not a lot of confidence from the perimeter to get from the perimeter to the paint. And you see it sometimes, but I'll tell you, last year I thought I saw it a lot more from guys like C.J. Jackson. We're not really seeing it this year as much. So the offense obviously trying to run through Caleb, and they're just doubling Caleb every time. I thought the great wrinkle we saw today is trying to force Andre to post up a lot more and him get a few scores in the post, which actually freed up Caleb a little bit later in the game, which we need that badly. We need somebody else to be able to post up, and Andre's showing another niche to his game. And a friend of mine actually said he thinks Andre might be the MVP of the team this season.
Good grief. I hate to do this. I'm going to actually have to give you credit for being insightful for once.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. I'll try to do better next time.
No, but you're absolutely right, though. I mean, Ohio State's offense, I thought, did the best. I mean, outside of Caleb, the offense runs through Caleb. We know that now. But I thought Ohio State's offense, when Caleb was not involved, when he was not on the floor or he was not playing very well, I thought Andre Wesson in the post was their most effective offense, because like you said, I mean, he sees when the double comes. He's actually got a pretty good arsenal of post moves down there as well. And if you get him on a smaller guard, if you get him switched up on like a 6'2" guard or something, he can really take advantage of that in the post. I think that's something that Ohio State may have found going forward, is getting him more touches on the block, because that was, I mean, you said it, that was really good offense for them when they didn't have a lot of it at times in this game.
Yeah, and I don't think Kyle Young or Ledee have that in their game right now. And I'm not saying they can't have it down the road, but right now it's just not their game. Kyle Young, I'm not dissing him. That guy gives so much to the team. I'll never be upset with him for his lack of offense. I mean, for the rebounding, the defense, the hustle play, he is Jashawn Tate without the scoring right now for us. But yeah, Andre down in the post, getting him on one-on-one matchups, it just opens up so many different things. And it looks like to me the Buckeyes, between Jackson, Washington, even Luther, and sometimes Woods, not as much, are starting to find their outside shot again, which is going to, obviously, if they can keep it, will help open up things down low. And if you have an extra post player like Andre, all of a sudden your offense can actually score in about 3 or 4 different ways, which the Buckeyes haven't had since Diop was here.
How many times in the past 3 weeks have you gotten the what's wrong with Dwayne Washington question?
At least, after every game, at least 2 or 3 times. I mean, not as much as you, because, you're more popular than I am, but I get it a couple times on my DMs. I mean, he's been sick, obviously, and sometimes freshmen go through a slump. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think it started out the first 3-4 games, and that slump was just because he was flat out sick. And then I think a couple games after that, I thought it looked like he wasn't back into game shape from being sick. And then I think for a game or two after that, I think he just was kind of shaking off the rust. But the last 2 games, I feel like we're starting to see his quickness back, and we're starting to see him get into a shot and get more elevation and lift. I think he's back 100% now. I thought this game, in spurts, we saw probably the closest to what we saw from him at the start of the year as we've seen since then. So I think that's encouraging because, with Luther really taking over, this is like 6 or 7 straight games now where Luther has been pretty good. And you add that in with Washington showing signs of maybe bouncing back. And if Ohio State can continue to get Andre Wesson involved like they did today, hey, look, there are some signs here. Ohio State's won 4 out of 5 now. Look, this offense is what it is. I'm not going to say it's magically going to start scoring 90 points a game, but we're seeing some signs of Ohio State being able to put it together and maybe develop an identity down the stretch.
Yeah, and if the Caleb and Andre, the Wesson brothers, they can both shoot outside. They're both a threat to hit it outside, and they can both be a threat down low as well, which will open up things for Caleb a little bit more down low. Which, as you know, most of the guys in the Big Ten can't stick with him. He's so big, is a one-on-one. But if it opens up the problems for people down low and on the outside to where they can't just park in the paint, then you obviously open up for a more confident Luther who can drive and has pretty good ball handling when he wants to. CJ may even get encouraged more to go to the basket a little bit more, which I think is more his strength than even his shooting when he actually drives the basket. Then all of a sudden you're going to start seeing an offense score between 65 and 75 against good teams because they're going to have so many different options as long as they stop with the careless turnovers. That's what's killing them more than anything.
And, really, if you look, even the losing streak, and I don't want to I know how this sounds to some people because you can't take away stuff from a game, right? You can't say, well, if they wouldn't have done this, because it did happen. But this team is so close. You take away 3 or 4 live ball turnovers a game. And the live ball turnovers, of course, being the turnovers that lead to transition points for the other team. When a ball is picked off by a defensive player at half court, then they go the other way and score with it because the defense can't get back and stop it. You cut out 3 or 4 of those a game. I'm not asking to go from 17 turnovers to 8 turnovers. Okay, that's not realistic. But you cut out like 3 live ball turnovers a game, and then you're maybe scoring 2, 4, 6 more points a game, but your opponents are scoring 4 to 6 points fewer. That doesn't seem like much. But in some of these games, that's the difference between wins and losses. And that's what Ohio State just needs to do. They need to be more efficient with the ball where they're cutting out a few turnovers a game. And all of a sudden, hey, Ohio State has a chance to really go on a run here, even against a pretty tough schedule coming up.
Yeah, and I know people look at records and they think that a team must be trash because of the record. But with this Thursday, they got Illinois coming up in the shot. And Illinois is not going to be fun, guys. I just be prepared for another battle. I think it'll be another 3 to 5 point win because Illinois just turns you over constantly with their harassing defense. What I would hope to see from the last time we played Illinois, they're overly aggressive in the pass lane. I'd like to see us use that slip a little bit more to get to the basket instead of just relying on what we usually do, which is try to pass the perimeter, then make the defense move. But I hope they drive more, and I hope they use the slip a little bit more because that's just what Illinois' defense is. Thankfully, it's Thursday and not like Tuesday where it's a quick turnaround so they can have a couple days to prepare.
It's funny because that first Illinois game, Ohio State handled the pressure itself really well. It was the secondary break where they got sloppy. They'd have a 3-on-2 and throw it away, or they throw an entry pass 30 feet over Caleb's head. It was stuff like that was killing him in that game. It was the unforced turnovers. They actually handled Illinois pressure really well that first time around, but they still wound up with a lot of turnovers because of the unforced stuff that they've been doing.
It'll be a tough game. I just hope people understand that Illinois is 9-15. They were 6-15. I think they won 3 in a row. And I remember watching them back against Ohio State. My father and I were watching, saying, you know what? This Illinois team's getting better, and they're really going to be a pain for people.
It will be interesting to see what Ohio State does. Curious while I have you on here. So, what do you see this team doing down the stretch? I have my own opinions. I'm curious how you see Ohio State handles these last. What is it? They're 6-6 now, so last 8 games of the league schedule.
I think a split is possible. I know they got some tough teams, at Michigan State. I think at Purdue. that's just going to be tough. I don't know if Michigan comes to the shot or not. I don't remember the rest of the schedule 100%. The thing is, they've got to win game. If they win the games they're supposed to win, they could put themselves in position to have a decent seed in the Big Ten tournament and hopefully make the tournament altogether. I don't know, but I'd see something like a split. I don't want to get my hopes up right now. They're not like looking dominant by any stretch of the imagination, but I do definitely think maybe even a surprise win. I think that's possible they could surprise Purdue or Michigan State down the road, because Michigan State's showing them some chinks in the armor recently too. So
yeah, they got Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, and Northwestern still on the road. I'm gonna say that they win 1 or 2 out of those 4. I think they'll win the Northwestern game, and that's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think they win that, and I think that they maybe even surprise 1 out of the other 3 that I mentioned: Michigan State, Purdue, and Maryland. And
I think they could surprise Michigan State. I really do.
Yeah, I think they could. It depends on which Michigan State shows up. The one that annihilated Minnesota, probably not, but the one that had lost 3 in a row before that, it's hard to say. But I think the Ohio State team goes 4-4 or 5-3 to finish it off. And if that happens, they're going to get in the tournament easily. They've already got, I mentioned this on Twitter, they've already got 4 quadrant 1 wins on the road, at Cincinnati, at Creighton, at Nebraska, and at Indiana. All 4 of those teams are top 75 teams in net. And basically a quad 1 is either top 35 home win, top 50 neutral win, or top 75 road win. And they've got 4 road wins against top 60 teams right now. So Ohio State is in really good shape right now as far as the tournament is concerned. They just need to win these home games that they're supposed to win. And then if they can pluck off 1 or 2 of those road games, they're going to be in the upper half of the bracket and will have no worries on Selection Sunday. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this team going on out. Any final thoughts on basketball before we switch over to football?
I guess, even though we've had some tough losses this year, I'm enjoying watching this team a lot. And the reason why is I love watching the young players get better. I got to say that I love Thad Matta, but the development of the player was not a strength of his going down to the last half of his career at Ohio State. You see a guy from like Andre Wesson who spent 1 year with Matta and now 2 years with Holtman, from his freshman to his junior year. Look at the massive improvement that guy's made. And I never thought he'd even be a contributor at Ohio State. Now he's an extremely important player, and not just because we lack talent or anything like that. It's because he legitimately contributes really strongly to the game. So I'm enjoying watching these young guys get better, because that's one of the funnest things about watching college basketball is watching young guys get better.
You know what that means? That's some breaking news here. Justin Fields is a Buckeye.
Well, we knew that.
Oh, we did? Okay, well,
yeah.
Well, in that case, I'll cancel the breaking news then. Yeah, let me turn off the breaking news because we knew that. Well, but okay, so Justin Fields is a Buckeye. I'm sure you guys heard that news last week. We talked about it. So now that all the speculation and the guessing is done, and actually let me back up a second, because it's interesting. A lot of people saw Justin Fields' statement, this past weekend. After he got declared eligible on Friday, it was interesting because he basically came out and said, the stuff that happened at Georgia, was overblown and it got blown up into something it wasn't. And a lot of people are kind of like shaking their heads, because it's like, well, how could Justin Fields say that after, the NCAA grants him this waiver and then he comes out and says it's no big deal. But to me, it's pretty clear exactly what happened. The University of Georgia did not want to go along with the request, but they did because they didn't want an embarrassment. They didn't want to be seen as supporting the racist incident and everything. So they wound up going along with it. And I feel like this was, in a way, purposeful. That statement was purposeful to make Georgia feel more comfortable going along with this, because by coming out and getting a statement that this was overblown and just kind of like not going into the details, this makes Georgia feel comfortable because they have no reason to have to rehash this now.
Yeah, and what's the kid supposed to say? He's supposed to come out and say, I just want to say that I hate Georgia and I hope that program burns in flames. It's just... what's he supposed? Look, he's been nothing but class since he's gotten to Ohio State.
Do you think he wants the program to burn in flames?
No, he doesn't. I just think he just, honestly, when it comes down to it, while I'm sure the incident probably was a little bit worse than what we know of, I'm guessing, I also think it has to do with he just wants to be coached by Ryan Day, which, okay, fine. And that being said, apparently Georgia actually objected to it, the immediate eligibility originally. So you're probably on the right track, or you probably know more than I think you know, because you always do. And there was some kind of agreement in place. Look, I'll say a nice thing. You just don't screw me over with the eligibility, and don't hurt me with it. And so he comes out and says, hey, look, I like Georgia. It's fine. Nothing's wrong. And people read too much into a statement without reading between the lines, or without thinking between the lines, I should say. I don't know. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I'm glad he did what he did instead of being a jerk about it. I'm glad he's showing class and leadership, if you ask me.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I actually think he probably isn't that worried about the incident, and I know some people will say, that's why this whole thing is a joke. He shouldn't have got the waiver granted to him. And, look, if you just concentrate on this incident, I don't know what was going through his mind, but if it just comes down to what he felt about this, yeah, he's probably transferring more because of the playing time than he is because of the incident. But who are we to minimize that? I mean, I don't know what's going through his mind. I don't know whether it was a big deal or not. But I actually do think he wanted out of there, because he made a statement last Wednesday in his media availability. He basically said he's been really impressed. This is more of a players program, and he already seems to be, from his comments, more comfortable here at Ohio State than he was at Georgia. And I don't know if that's because of the incident or not, but I do think he just didn't feel comfortable there for whatever reason.
Yeah, I agree. It's not even just that. You talk to, or they've asked so many other players, like even Zach Harrison of all people, about how they feel about Justin Fields, and they all say the same thing. I haven't seen him play yet, but he's a really good guy. I really like him a lot. So he's fitting in. I love the fact, you read the reports that he's just doing his best to fit in right now. He's not trying to go in there and take over the locker room or anything like that. He's just trying to go to work and fit in. I love everything I'm reading about the kid, and I love the way he's handling himself. I think it's been perfect so far. And I do love the fact that he got all these other players on Twitter, former and current. They found out he was eligible, and they're all cheering for him. And it just shows that how much he's been a positive impact as a person on the players, on the program. So honestly, and I'm of the belief, and I've been of the belief for some time now, kind of like you, your first time. I'm saying this for Tate Martell as well, by the way. Your first time transferring, I don't see a problem with getting immediate eligibility, because sometimes things change within the program you committed to when you made a decision as an 18-year-old kid, and it's just not a good fit. There's nothing wrong with trying to find a better fit, but I would just object to people doing it every year until they find a starting spot. I agree. The funny thing is, I don't like some of these waivers. I don't like some of the requests. Like, Tate Martell has no business getting a waiver, but at the same time, I think he shouldn't have to sit out. And that's just because I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I didn't word it correctly, but I agree with you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't like some of these waivers, but I don't think you should have to get a waiver. If you're gonna have the waiver system, then yeah, some of these guys have no business getting one. But I would just like to do away with the subjectivity and just say, hey, you got a 2.5 GPA, you're eligible. Guess what? You can transfer one time without sitting out. I just make it that way for everybody. I mean, the swimmer that transfers from Ohio State to Butler, I don't even know if Butler has a swimming program, but let's just say they do. The swimmer that transfers from Ohio State to Butler doesn't have to sit out. That's Division I, Division II, Division III. So let's just make it that way for everybody.
Yeah, and I do agree with a friend of mine who uses the term free agents. I don't want to see free agency in college football, but I agree with that. The one-time thing is fine, and then after that, it's like, okay, now you're just fishing until you find the absolute perfect spot. At some point you're going to have to just buckle up and get to work. But if you're not comfortable, obviously, like you said, Justin, for whatever reason, whether it was that incident or just the locker room or the coaching staff or whatever it was, he was not comfortable there. And I don't really think it's necessarily a playing time thing per se, because he's not a stupid kid. He got there knowing Jake Fromm had just come off a national title appearance as a true freshman, that he was going, but by barring an act of God, he was going to be the starter the next year. And Fields did play quite a bit, so I don't think it was. Maybe he just wasn't happy with the way they were developing him. And then you hear from Quincy Avery that Ryan Day's doing a great job with quarterbacks, and you think, well, and then Fields said it in his press conference or whatever it was. You want to call a Q&A that, hey, I just want to get to the pros, and Ryan Day can get me to the pros. So it's not really secretive as to what he really wants out of a college right now. And maybe he just felt Ryan Day offered him a better chance. So that might have been the bare bones reasoning to go to Ohio State. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what's in his head. I don't know what the incident 100% was. But obviously, I don't think it's just playing time, or if it's just because or I don't think it's just playing time, as some people like to say. I don't think that really has a lot to do with it, in my opinion. He's, like I said, he's not stupid. He knew who Jake Fromm was and what year he was in.
If he's anything like me, he probably want to get out of there because he didn't like Athens. I don't know what maybe it's just me. Everybody talks about how great a town Athens is. And I mean, look, it's a beautiful college town, but I don't know. I always get the heebie-jeebies when I was over there. You know, I lived in Atlanta for several years, and I was over in Athens many times. And I don't know. I'm not. Maybe it's just me, but I'm not getting the hype about that place. I always felt weird because it's like, you know, you drive 45 minutes to an hour or so northeast from Atlanta. You get in, and you know you're going through. There's really nothing around on your way over there. And Athens isn't that big of a town to begin with outside of the college. It's just really a dinky town that's just the college itself. And there's like nothing outside. I mean, literally, you get areas that's a little bit like Penn State, although not as extreme. Because you know, you get to State College. There's nothing around for miles and miles and miles and miles. And Athens isn't quite like that, but it's just kind of like isolated. And I always felt weird driving over there. I know, rant over, right? But I'm not a fan of Athens, Georgia.
It makes you wonder how Kirby's recruiting so well.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, look, it's not like, I mean, you know, everybody's been saying for years Georgia, you know, needs to be better there because there's so much talent in that state. But Georgia has never been able to lock up talent in that state. There's never been any allegiance whatsoever. So this is really actually kind of unique that for once, they actually are landing these guys.
Yeah, it's a little unique, isn't it? I won't get too much into it.
I'm just going to leave it at that right there. I'm just going to say it's unique. You guys can read into whatever you want. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at KYLam8 if you have any theories as to what unique may mean. Or you can hit up Corey at Scarlet Great CT. Please stick to that. You know, he gets enough abuse on Twitter already, so don't call him names.
Actually, better yet, go to Johnny at Scarlet Great JL and talk to him about it. Even though he probably hasn't, he might not even listen to this podcast.
Yeah, probably not. He says he's going to listen. We'll see if he actually does. Speaking of abuse, are you going to address this vendetta you have against Jeff Hafley and, you know, trying to run him out of town?
You know what? I'm just tired of the guy already. I don't think the defensive backs are performing up to the speed they need to be performing, and I want him gone. I think Ryan Day really messed up here.
Yeah. Just to be clear, if you caught my commentary on Twitter last week at Corey trying to run Hafley out of town, that was the joke. He doesn't want to run Hafley out of town. He's actually probably as high on Jeff Hafley as I am. I talked about Hafley last week, so actually I want to talk about a different guy. I think another guy that low-key would have hyped or excited a lot of people in the Ohio State Buckeye Nation is Al Washington, not just because they got him from Michigan and not just because he's a great recruiter, but the other thing is, you know, lost on how much frustration there was over Greg Schiano last year and master control of the defense there was even more frustration, maybe not discussed as publicly as much, over Bill Davis and the linebacker play. And so if nothing else, you know, there's a lot of talent on that Ohio State linebacking core. So I'm interested to see Al Washington, not the recruiter, or Al Washington, not the former Michigan coach. I want to see Al Washington, the linebackers coach, this year.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think all the coaches were actually pretty impressive. Maybe it's just being a bias, but I actually Madison even grew on me quite a bit. Yeah, I agree with you. And by the way, I do like Hafley, for those who didn't get the sarcasm there. I do really like Hafley, just so nobody abuses me on Twitter for it. But yeah, Washington is probably the one I was most excited about that we hired, just because you know what his reputation as a recruiter. You know that Michigan linebackers played really well. And I hate to say it, folks, they outplayed ours. But, you know, they didn't even necessarily have the overall talent level that we did. Not to say they don't have talented guys, because Devin Bush, Khalid Hudson are good players. But, you know, between Baron Browning, Malik Harrison, Tuff Borland, I know I say that name, people cringe, but wait till he's healthy and with proper coaching. Let's see what he does. Pete Werner, who's much more talented than people give him credit for. I'm not going to go through all the names, but these are guys that are good players and are talented. And we also have Dallas Ganton, Taraja Mitchell and folks. But I'm really curious to see, like, the early indication was, and I think it's overhyped a little bit, but that Al Washington saw what they were being taught and didn't really agree with it. And so we're going to see maybe a new direction for the linebackers. He wasn't going to say who the starters were going to be. He wasn't going to say that it was going to even necessarily open jobs. He just wanted to evaluate and go work from there. I like the non-committal part of that. That the fact is he's saying what he's telling you in a way is, I want to get in there and coach these guys and just see who comes out on top. That's how I took it. I don't know how did you take it, Kyle?
Yeah, I think that's it too. I think that so much they do. I mean, I know Urban's not there anymore, but so much that they do over there is motivation, and they want to get certain sound bites out into the public, and they want the players to read it. And I think I kind of felt like that's what that was. I think he wanted to leave it open-ended. You mentioned Tough Borland, and it's a shame that you couldn't bring him up with Johnny on, because I'm sure you would want to sit back with your popcorn and listen to Johnny and I debate Tough Borland for a half hour. But I really am interested to see how Tough Borland comes back next year, because, I don't agree with the people that call him slow. I do think he was running slower last year, and I assume it's probably because of he was back way quicker than anybody expected him to be from the injury. And I think that probably was, you might say running in quicksand or whatever, but he probably was without that burst that he had. Not that he was a speed burner the year before, but I don't think he had that burst last year. And I kind of think we're going to see him be a little bit quicker next year. But it'll be interesting because he's got a lot of competition. I mean, Baron Browning came on really strong at the end of last year as well. So I'm looking forward to that position battle specifically more than anything. I like where the outside guys are, both first and second string. I think Warner was underrated last year. We saw what Malik did at the end of the year, and then he came back and he's going to build off that success. So I really think what Borland and Browning does inside is going to be key for Ohio State.
Yeah, and I think that between Washington and Hafley, I think the back seven's going to look just a light years better this year. And I love the idea that Madison is so open to the idea of having a co-coordinator, and he actually likes the idea. And I guess Ryan Day had him and Hafley meet before they even got hired just to see if they could work together, and it seems like it's a good pairing so far. And I'll admit, when Madison first got hired, I was not happy. I just thought, oh, geez. But now I see the whole picture. I didn't see it. I was emotional at the time. I didn't see the big picture at the time. But I'm actually excited about this staff now. And I think the defense is going to be dramatically improved in next year because the talent is there. And now it's experienced. Well, we lose Nick Bosa, which is awful. I hate losing Nick Bosa. But you lose Nick Bosa, Jermane Jones on the defensive line. And who else did you lose? Kendall Sheffield. We have a lot of returning experience coming back. And now, in my opinion, an upgraded staff from last year. So I think the defense could be easily a top 20 defense that's coming up here.
What did you make of Hafley's comments? Because did you hear when he was talking about Ohio State, how they would rotate corners, and he never understood it? And he kind of came off of that a little bit. He said, now I can see, they've constantly got first rounders, coming up through the ranks. And so I can kind of understand it now. But it also made it sound like left to his own devices, he does not want to rotate the corners as much as they do. We don't know what Madison's strategy is going to be on that. We don't know what Ryan Day is going to want. So I'm kind of curious what you took from that. If he has his way, do you think that they're going to rotate those corners less? Or was that him just, answering a question at face value, saying, yes, I didn't understand it before, but I can see the value in it now?
I think it was coach speak, it sounds to me. I don't think I think he's trying very hard, like he did with the Schiano comments, not to step on anybody's toes. Because he may not agree with some of the way we did things in the past, and he doesn't really want to say that. Because he kind of said, well, I didn't come here to fix the defense. Well, okay, I understand Schiano's your guy, but come on, we know the defense needs to be fixed. So I think when he mentions rotating corners, I think he's trying to pay respects to how we did things in the past. I believe probably left to his own devices. In the NFL, I don't think they're rotating that much. left to his own devices, he's going to find the two best out there and make sure that those are his guys to lock down the outside. And then I don't know who that'll be. I know Okudah will be one of them. I don't know if Arnett or Wade will be the other one. You have to give the edge to Arnett, obviously, but it'll be. He says the best player will play. We'll see, but I think left to his own devices, we're going to see more of just sticking to two man and with a nickel.
Yeah, Johnny tries to take the same approach with your podcast. The best podcaster will podcast, but he hasn't been able to find a suitable replacement for you yet. He's trying hard, though.
There's not too many who could do what I do, and by that I mean put up with Johnny.
Funny, he would say the same thing about you. There's not too many who could put up with you.
That's true, and yet you asked me to be on your show. It's
yeah, weird. I know. I told him I'm going to have to rethink my life's path asking you to be on. His first reaction was, what on God's green earth is going on over there at Unscripted Ohio? Must be some lean times.
Well, to be fair, just to let the audience know, I was like his sixth choice, so it's okay.
Yeah, I'll admit I asked Kirk and then I asked Ross if they wanted to be on. Actually, Ross has kids and a family, and Kirk wasn't able to get back with me, but that's okay. Despite being my sixth choice, Corey, you did a phenomenal job today.
They have a family, and I'm just a lonely loser. So
no, don't worry. It's hashtag next man up, man. You did your job. You stepped in. Cardale Jones was the third quarterback at one time, and he stepped in admirably too. So.
Are you saying I'm going to stink the next time I'm on your podcast?
I didn't even think about that. Well, I don't have. I'll bench you quicker than Cardale got benched. Let's just put it that way. Yeah,
you're not gonna do the urban thing. You don't have a JT waiting in the wings. So
no, you're right. I don't. So hey, I'm going to put you on the spot. What do you have? You may not have even thought about this yet, and if that's okay, it's going to be even funnier. A funnier podcast moment. What do you have coming up on the Scarlet and Great podcast on Wednesday?
Well, we were going to talk about Justin Fields until you ruined it.
Well, you still can, but I don't want to make it overkill now.
It's going to be a basketball signing day recap, which I know there's not a lot to recap, but I want to talk about the class a little bit that a lot of people are kind of down on. I think it's a great class myself. Talking about Justin Fields a little bit, and we have some word on the street stuff coming. So.
Well, there you have it. That is going to wrap it up for Unscripted Ohio today. Of course, as Corey just said, the Scarlet and Great podcast will be coming up on Wednesday here on the Unscripted Ohio Network. Johnny Lunsford and Corey will come at you with the latest and greatest in Ohio State news. That is why it is the Scarlet and Great podcast. As for us, you can catch us every Monday and Friday on BuckeyeGrove.com. Of course, you can catch us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. Plenty of choices, so there are no excuses for you not to listen to the Unscripted Ohio podcast or Scarlet and Great. Be sure to find us, search for us, and find us, subscribe, then rate and review, and do all that great stuff. So we will be back at you on Friday with another Unscripted Ohio. Of course, you can listen to Corey and Johnny on Wednesday. You can hit me up on Twitter at KYLam8, and you can find Corey on Twitter at ScarletGreatCT. Thanks, everybody, for the listen. Corey, thank you for joining me in a pinch, and you've been a fantastic fill-in co-host. Actually, you weren't really filling in because I don't have a co-host, but you did a fantastic job as co-host.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. So that is going to do it for Unscripted Ohio today. Please listen to Corey and Johnny on Wednesday, and we'll be back at you on Friday.
I'm begging you.
Yes, I'm begging. It's not my daughter's wedding day, but let's just pretend it is, and you can't turn down this request on my daughter's wedding day. So anyway, back at you on Friday. Have a great week, everybody.
You can get new episodes of Unscripted Ohio on Mondays and Fridays exclusively at BuckeyeGrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all things Ohio State.